Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. It's time to take a look at another Siege Transformer. And this time around, we've got one of the harder ones to find. This is Ratchet. Ratchet, of course, is an exclusive toy to Walgreens stores. But finding him at one has been a challenge. I have been looking for this toy for quite a while now in the lineup. Even when I went there for my flu shot back in October, and there was no signs of him. Thankfully, one evening my brother had to go for some cough medicine, and lo and behold, there he is. So, good special shout out to Cyclonus150 for finding him. And then making me pay for him. But at any rate, this is the Siege version of Ratchet, and as like many of you could expect, he is a repaint of Ironhide, with a slight retool to give him a different head. But of course, that's also fitting, as in the G1 continuity, for the toy line at least, Ratchet was also a repaint of Ironhide, but also had a slight retooling since they had to add the light bar onto the top of the vehicle mode. And yes, to all the young people who may be watching, this was how he looked in the Generation 1 era, as a toy. Of course, in the cartoon, they added a headpiece to it, whereas for the G1, there was a sticker in here. This one doesn't have that. There was a sticker in here to be the head. Now, for any of you who might be wondering why it was like that, well, the original toy for this was part of a toy line in Japan that was called Micromen, and the Diaclone line, but this was for a Diaclone car team that the vehicles were, in essence, powered mecha. So, seeing in here as he had a little seat, that was for a little tiny man to be placed in there to be a driver. And of course, as we can see down here in the lower portion, there's another seat. So obviously somebody else would be sitting in there to operate the gun. So that's always why Ratchet and Ironhide looked rather different compared to the other Transformers. But of course, a fair number of the Transformer toys came from that toy line as well. The only other one that really shows the obvious roots in that is Optimus Prime. But of course, the Dinobots and Insecticons also had special cockpits in them that were intended for little tiny pilots to ride inside. Anyway, enough history. Let's get on with the review. As we can tell now, this Ratchet is more cartoon accurate to his original toy, although he does have some added features to him. Like, namely, the fact he has this weapon pack mounted onto his back. This is basically, it's meant to be more for a surgical laser. But in a pinch, you can imagine Ratchet would use it as an offensive weapon. Granted, it would not do much damage to an opponent, but in a pinch, it'd be better than nothing. Of course, a comparison of articulation is in order. And to do that accurately, we need to remove the G1 version from his trailer. We'll set the trailer aside, and then you can get a real sense of the comparison of the size of the two robots. But at any rate, the original one, you could rotate his arms at the shoulder to move them back and forth. You also could rotate here at the bicep a bit. That's where the arm did the primary rotation. But it also swivels at the bicep. So in a way, Ratchet did have swivel arm battle grip. Not that he could do anything with it. And of course you could bend his ankle, bend him at his ankles. But that was more for transforming him than for any other real practical purposes. For the Siege version, however, we have considerably different. We can turn his head from left to right, like so, and it is on a ball joint, so it can look up and down just a little bit. You can raise his arm up to the side about so far, or raise it all the way up like so. And you can swing the arm around at the shoulder, all the way around. He does have a joint at the elbow, so you can bend his arm at the elbow about 90 degrees. And there is a swivel at the bicep. So he has the popular G.I. Joe swivel arm battle grip. He is connected at the hips like so, so he can be twisted at the hip. His legs can be spread apart to do a full splits. You can raise his leg at the hip about 90 degrees, and you can bend his leg at the knee about 90 degrees. So we have a considerable amount of posability for Ratchet. Let's briefly take a look at Siege Ratchet's accessories. We'll start with the one in his hand. This is described in his instructions as a Magno wrench. And it does give statistics on it being a melee weapon. As you can imagine, it is rather weak, modestly accurate, but it also doesn't have a lot of weight to it, so this isn't exactly the Transformers equivalent of a pipe wrench, but it does work out. Then next, we have this piece from his back unit that can be removed. This is referred to in the instructions as a laser scalpel, which is modestly strong and very accurate, and has about average range. So it is implied that it could be used as a weapon, if need be. Of course, both of those weapon stats change when they're mounted onto this back unit. Of course, they label this as either a protraction magno hoist or a protraction laser launcher, depending on what is attached inside. So as you saw earlier, we did have the scalpel in it, but it can also have the wrench. Excuse me. Another way, we're going to refer to this as the protraction crane. It is jointed here at the base, so it can fold over 180 degrees down here. And of course, it is jointed up here for the same degrees. So when it's like this, it's in its basic storage mode, and then fully extended out for service. Now we're going to take and transform Ratchet. Ratchet, of course, has two alternate modes. Unlike Ironhide, Ratchet here gains an extra mode. Well, actually, the extra mode is basically an add-on in between modes, basically. So as you can imagine, we start by opening up his chest, fold the head in, and then close the chest right up. We raise the arms up to the sides like so. And then we are going to rotate them. Around right here where you can see we got a post, And we got a hole here on this side, and we got a post here on the other. I'm going to rotate them so that that way they can be brought together above the toy like so. And then we take the toy, the cab here on his chest, and we're going to swing it round so that that way it rotates all the way. It does tend to get a little stuck due to the positioning of the arms, so you may have to separate the arms so they clear his hip piece, like so. And then you'll bring this bumper assembly up and snap it into place. And then down here at the back, you're going to kind of press the legs in, like so, so they're together. And then we fold the arms out to the sides. Then comes the fun of actual rotation. So they get rotated, where these long red bars at the top of his shoulders are going to be kept facing downwards. And then you rotate the arms at the bicep so that these holes will be up at the top. And then we just adjust the body to keep the arms downward a bit. You got to fold the arms straight out so that that way they'll stay straight and stiff, like so. And then basically you have him as a repair bay, which of course the instructions suggest you put the scalpel here on this side, and then you attach the wrench onto the unit over here, and then connect it to the other side. And then there you go. You can simulate that you are repairing a small transformer. That should at least allow you to have a little bit of fun. You can basically put a Micromaster or a small weaponizer in there. Anybody bigger than that, and we're getting a little too big for it. The deluxe class is probably about the largest you would go. Anything bigger, and they're too big to be in here. But at any rate, that's the repair bay mode. We shall remove the weapons from him now. Then next, to finish the transformation, we swing the arms up like so. Make sure they're rotated in a way like this, so that way you can bring them together when you need to. But we're going to rotate them so that the holes are now all up at the top side. Then we got to separate the legs, because we've got to bring these pieces out. Like so. Get them opened up. Then we're going to twist the arms to put them upward and start folding them together. Connecting them up like so. And then we can arrange to reconnect the legs down here like that. Fold these side panels so that they cover the hands up top. And then these folding panels at the side, you just bring out and lock into place. Just exactly like that. And there you have Ratchet in his ambulance mode. Now, of course, if you fold down the protraction crane, you can attach it into both holes. Well, it'll mainly go in where the first one connects to, as it's a longer post than the back one. And then, of course, mount the scalpel in. And there you have it. Ratchet's ambulance mode. Of course, let's put a side-by-side look with the Generation 1 version. Which, of course, the G1 version was intended to be a real vehicle. It was based on a Nissan Cherry Vanette one-box that was modified to be an ambulance. So we're basically talking about a decent-sized van that has pretty much been built up to be an ambulance, not a specific ambulance like what you see nowadays. And as you can see, there are quite substantial differences, especially since the Siege one is meant to be just a Cybertronian version. But it is nice to see that it does pay some homage. Like, we get a fair amount of red striping. It's scattered on the Siege toy, but as you can see on the G1, there is a nice solid stripe. Now, of course, there's no red cross on the top of the newer one. Of course, there's some history behind the red cross on the G1 version. Since I haven't reviewed the G1 Ratchet yet, I'll drop a little bit of the history about it. Apparently, since the Red Cross is an international group, you do need to have their permission to put it on a product like this. So, when Hasbro released Ratchet, they did not have that permission, and subsequent Ratchets were released without it. So as you can imagine, Ratchets that do have the cross on the top of the van and on his fists are worth slightly more than those that do not. But that change is also reflected on the instructions and the tech spec and the box. So if you're somebody that does seek out variants to the old G1 toys, that's something you will want to pay attention to. At any rate, let's see. How does this new one roll before we start getting to my final thoughts? Rolls pretty good, actually. Rolls pretty good on this solid table here. Now we get to my thoughts. What do I think of Ratchet? I think it was a good idea to include Ratchet into the toy line. Especially since, given that most of the modern fans that would know of the toy are going to remember him more from the Michael Bay movies, where he was basically a modified Hummer. And that really didn't sit well with a lot of us G1 fans, myself in particular. Granted, yes, it was an emergency vehicle Hummer, but it was still an oversized Hummer, not an ambulance like the original toy was intended to be. So this makes a nice homage to the original by being something of an ambulance. Of course, it's also fitting that he's an exclusive at a drugstore chain. Although it would have been nice if we would have been given some idea as to when in the world he was going to be released in that chain. So that way some of us would have quit wasting our time looking for him when he wasn't there. Normally I would criticize and complain that he's a repaint, especially since we've had a lot of repaints out of the Siege line, and many fans are already anticipating we're going to have that again for Earthrise. And in this case I'm not going to be that critical about it, since when you look at the history of it, the G1 version was a repaint of another toy as well, so it kind of carries that as an homage to it, in a vague sort of way. The accessories, they're pretty nice for this toy, and about what you would expect for Ratchet. To basically come with medical and repair tools. The added protraction crane in the back is a nice touch. It does at least allow him a way to hold everything. So I do like its inclusion with it. So, all in all, I think this toy is probably just barely deserving of being in the top tier. So it is definitely a character that does have some use with the Transformer line, as he is a medical professional. Not exactly a doctor. He was listed as a medic in the original bio. But it's still nice to get a new form of this medic. One that's at least a little sturdier of a toy, and one that's a little better crafted of a toy than what his original one is. So this one is definitely a worthy successor to the original. And that concludes my review of the Siege version of Ratchet. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please drop me a thumbs up here on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below and join our ranks. Don't forget to ring the bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. And also, unless they flag this video for kids, please leave your comments about Ratchet in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.